Welcome back to our Stay at Home and Stitch Fun in the Sun Summer Camp 2020 with Laura Bosma, Pretty Paint Precuts, in the Southeastern Quilt and Textile Museum. As I mentioned in the previous video, I'm not finishing mine just in case I need to show it to you on one of our Zoom get-togethers and somebody has some questions and I need more place to stitch. We're going to change to orange to do a new stitch called couching over the straps of the flip-flop, and that color is the orange, and it's 4124. So if you don't remember how to pull the floss from the longest of the two ends, it's usually here by the numbers in the skew. This is the one that you'll pull, and it should pull smoothly. Remember, we want to work with about 22 inches, 18 to 22 inches. And we need to peel it down to 2 strands. That's in a previous video, a couple before this, so go back to that. Now I'm going to throw you a tiny bit of a loop so that I'm sure you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to change the color of the threads on my sample for the flip-flops. These colors match so perfectly that I'm not sure you're able to see quite what I want to show you. So one of the first tricks that an artist or a stitcher might do is choose a color's complementary color. So blue and orange are complementary colors and therefore look really good together. So like I said, although I stitched the original in orange, so that I'm sure you can see the stitches and how they're formed, I'm going to stitch the straps this time in the orange's complementary color, which is the aqua. And then I know you're going to be able to see it. So that's what I've done. Now you can do what you'd like. Maybe you do prefer using a complementary color in the stitching so that you can see it even more. By all means, you know, make that decision and do it. There's not a thing wrong with that. All right, so on your flip-flop straps, you've got a bulkier, tinier spot up here, and that's where technically the strap would go into that rubber flip-flop. We've probably all had a pair, so you kind of know how they're made. We're going to put a cross stitch, just a single cross stitch right there on this part. We're going to go around, and then we're going to end with another single cross stitch across that part. In between here, we're going to couch. Couching is a term where you're laying threads over something to hold it down. It's that you don't necessarily, we're not going to necessarily go through the orange at all. We're going to be stitching on the right side or the left side over it as we go, and that's a couching stitch. So let's follow the same procedure. I want to come up probably about right here at my position number 7 if this was a clock. I'm going to come in way over here again, kind of nestle up under there, and I'm going to come up through the blue flip-flop and try to be even with this chubbier part right here as part of the flip-flop. I'm going to pull my needle and hopefully bury my thread pretty simply. Yep, it buried, and I know it's secure. I'm not pulling it out. And to do a flip-flop, I'm going to actually change my position just a little bit. I'm not quite as high as I'd like to be. So I want my thread to come out next to the orange, right where it gets super skinny. And I use my thread. It's a very old-fashioned term, like a divining rod. If you don't know what that is, people in days of old thought they could figure out where water was in the soil with a stick or a branch or whatever. They would divine. They would guess the position with that. Well, I'm guessing the position of where my X needs to go by laying the thread so that I know I'm at that about a 45-degree angle. If I guess, then that's not going to be enough of a cross. But down here is more like it. I'm going to go in. So this is your position 1 at 7 o'clock. I'm going to go in across at position maybe about 2:30. And I'm going to come up back over here at about, I don't know, is that 12 o'clock, 11 o'clock? I'm going to come up there. So I went from here to here, and I'm going to go underneath the flip-flop to there. Now, as I pull this, I'm going to kind of tuck that thread by coaxing it to where I really want it to be. I'm going to pull it slowly, and you can see I've laid it down diagonally. I'm going to come out again and be back at about that 7 o'clock position. So there, and then I'm going to go in, I'm going to go underneath the blue flip-flop, and I'm going to come out just on the opposite side above my original stitch, and that's an X, that's a cross. So there's my cross holding that part down. For the rest of it then, I'm just going to make diagonal stitches. Again, I use the thread to help me know what's that would be straight across, and that would be diagonal. So I know I want to go in right about there. So I'm going to go in through the blue. I haven't stitched on the orange at all. I've just gone over it, and that's the purpose of couching. I'm going to follow where I think I need to go. I'm going to go under the blue. I'm going to come up straight across from where I was. So I went in at the diagonal, and I went straight under the strap, and then I'm going to do it again. I'm going to lay that over. I like the direction that it's taking. I like that this amount of orange shows is pretty even, and I'm just going to kind of move that thread out of the way for a sec, and I'm going to go into hopefully a little bit of the blue and up under the orange, and I'm going to come out. And again, I think you can see that better with the contrasting color. And I'm going to, again, use my thread as my divining rod. Which way do I go? It's telling me my direction. And I'm just going to coax it back out of the way a little bit and go in and then come up straight across underneath it. And then you'll just put that on repeat. I'm going to draw my new line with the thread. I know I want to be about right there. And then I'm going to go under the orange and come up through the blue. And I'm going to do it again. Now at some point, we do lose our angle a little bit. Don't worry about that. I'm more concerned that we keep a fairly even. I just think it looks aesthetically pleasing, meaning it's a good look if this is equally, sort of equidistant apart. It can get a little farther apart as we get wider on the strap, and then you'll narrow it back up on the other side. All right, and then I'm going to come up over here. And I'm going to do that again. In order to regain my angle, here's what I could do. Instead of going like that, I could back it up a little bit, but I'm going to just keep going. Again, couching, laying threads over to hold something down. Now here we have a weird V position that we've got to deal with, so here's what I suggest you do. Go in, go out that 1/8 of an inch distance or so underneath the strap, and come up. And then for about 3 or 4 stitches, we're going to come right back to this center V at the point of the flip-flop, at the inside point of the flip-flop. So I'm going to come back to there. And I'm going to go in there. I'm going to come up right next to, if it was a rubber flip-flop, that'd be where it entered the shoe again, this little point here. So I came back to the center. I'm going to come back out there. All right, I'm going to put one more stitch, and then I'm going to go back in the center and come out right about there, about the same spot as where that stitch is. Just now we're working on the opposite side. I'm going to come back to the center again. So there's a lot of stitches going in what I'm calling center. Remember to make an effort to try not to split your stitches. That means don't put your needle back through. You can put your needle through any of the wool. Try not to put your needle back through the threads. Because if you decide you need to take something out, it's very difficult to undo. All right, I'm going to go my 1/8 of an inch away or so. And then I'm going to just keep going. And if the angle's a little different on this side than this side, it's actually not anything I'm going to worry about. I'm just going to try and keep the distance from my blue thread to blue thread to blue thread roughly even. And I hope you can see with the contrasting thread how that's going. So again, this is a couching stitch, and we use couching to lay thread over something to hold it down. I'm not stitching through the orange. I'm stitching on the right and left side of it through the flip-flop, and I'm just drawing my thread up over the top of the orange strap. I think it's a fun look. It's a great way to handle something like this that is that has narrow and then wider than narrow portions. Now here, the strap is very close, if not off the edge, onto the sand, just like it would be if it was a real flip-flop. Don't worry about that. I'm going in at the blue. I'm going to come out through the sand at the edge of where my blue and orange are virtually on top of each other over here. No big deal. Again, use this thread to show you where do I go next. That looks good. I'm going to go right under it. I'm not going through the stitches, through the thread. I'm going right under it so that I used it as a direction or a directional tool. I think I got 1 or 2 more stitches, and I'm back to that little chubby part up at the top. All right, good. I'm going to go in right about here. I'm going to come out just about directly across from it. So this different distance between this stitch and where I'm coming out the next time are very close. They're not 1/8 of an inch away. And then I'm going to work my cross again. What looks like the best diagonal position to hold this down? I'm thinking it's probably about there. And then I'm going to come up right near that our last straight couching stitch. I'm going to go in and come up. I'm going to coax that thread to stay on top of the orange. I'm going to draw my new line so I really have a distinct looking X. Again, it's not a literal drawing of a line, it's moving my thread. If I put it here, I lost my X. If I put it over there, I lost my X. If I put it here, I've got a darn good one. So I'm using it just as a little bit of a map. I'm going to come back up pretty close to where we were on the other side. And that's it. That's couched all of that orange down. I think we're fine leaving this. If you have a concern about it when you're here, do 1 more stitch where you actually go into the orange to hold that point down. And that would be okay. Obviously, we can't do it from here because we're way up here. But while you're down there, when you start it, maybe you want 1 more stitch straight through the center of this B. It almost looks like a wishbone. And this time, you will go through the orange just to kind of hold that down. If you look at this one, I did just kind of skip over it. I do think it's probably good enough. All right, we're going to bury our ending thread just like we did here. I came up here. I'm going to go up under the orange and maybe shoot for the other side. I'm going to look here and it doesn't show. Look at that a little bit more clearly. I'm going to come up. I'm going to go back under and come up. And I'm right next to the blue. And the stitches don't show from this side, but I know I'm under there. And I'm going to pull that. You could go 1 more time going in the opposite direction. It's actually good to change direction so that you really have it in there. And then don't cut your threads that you stitched, just the one that we don't need anymore. And we'll just cut that even. And that's the first one done. So hopefully you're happy with that. I'm going to pause the camera for a sec, and then I'm going to come back with blanket stitching the flip-flop. And again, I'm going to do it in the contrasting color. So I use blue up here. Now I'm going to use orange here, just so I'm sure that you have a real good view of the stitches and what I'm doing. So I'll see you at the next video. Okay, I actually didn't turn the video off and you know that, but that's okay. You saw me do that silently. So I'm going to assess my flip-flop in the same, for me, you know, suggestions apply. I'm going to start at about 7 o'clock. So I'm going to go underneath the flip-flop on this side and kind of wiggle through the blanket, the sand blanket. I don't have any stitches showing on that side. I'm going to pull and I'm going to bury that knot. Orange has disappeared. I'm going to twist this a little bit so that I'm moving in the correct direction. And I'm just going to repeat those same stitches, but you're really going to be able to see them now. So with my contrasting thread, orange and blue are complementary colors. I'm going to go over that 1/8 of an inch or so, and I'm going to come up through the sand. Remember, I'm always working within this thread circle, and that's how that leading thread catches it each time at the perimeter. I'm going to scoot over and just go on repeat with my blanket stitches. So over an 1/8 of an inch, up an 1/8 of an inch, through the sand, and then back again. Now to turn the corner or turn the curve, our stitches get a little closer together inside here. They stay the same length out here, but they get closer in there. And you'll find that you'll just have a little bit better control. Those threads will be more likely to lay flat and follow the perimeter of what you're stitching, which is our goal. In at the aqua, out at the sand, pulling my thread through the circle. So in at the aqua, out at the sand, and pulling my thread through the circle. In at the aqua and out at the sand, and I'm going to pull my thread through the circle. So why am I showing you blanket stitch again? Well, it's because we've got some areas where we can't blanket stitch well, and I want to show you that. And that does happen. I'll show you the tip or the trick to make that all look good. So in at the aqua, out at the sand, and pulling up through this thread circle that forms each time. And again, I'm employing my left thumb to just kind of hold that there so that it always stays where I need it to be. So now my stitches are going to get tinier because I've only got a small space here to actually stitch in. So I'm going to come right next to the orange. I'm going to come out at the sand. I'm going to take one more microscopically tiny stitch right there, tiny bit of aqua, and I got me some sand. And then I have to decide, do I want to bury my thread up under here? And I just might want to. So I'm going to come outside of my tiny leg right there. I'm on the other side of it. I'm going to jump beyond it. I'm going to go under my blanket, and I'm going to just come up back up here where, can't see it from that side, where I want to start stitching again. And so I don't have to worry about this lifting much. We've already stitched it down with what we've done there. So I'm going to come in about, again, that same 1/8 of an inch. I don't have much to bite on, but I'm doing it anyway. There you go. And then the next stitch is very close to the orange, but that's okay. They'll get farther and farther away as we have more space to stitch on. Hopefully that was helpful. You know, how do I go buy something where I didn't want to stitch orange on here because that interferes with the look of the flip-flop. But I think you got it. And again, we'll just keep going as you work through the toe of the flip-flop. Note that you're going to want your stitches to come a little closer together on the inside in order to make that curve and to curve that subtly. So I hope that worked well for you, that you enjoyed seeing that. I'm going to go ahead and end this right here. We've learned blanket stitch. We've learned couching with a little cross stitch. We've learned blanket stitch again in contrasting thread so that you can see what we're doing. And then finally, we're going to do some couching over the flower. So I'm going to end this because what I encourage you to do for project number 1, this is the fun pouch. I reuse threads that were used in the project itself. I reuse those on purpose in the couching of the flower. So I'm going to clip that. And I'm going to jump over here. So I don't have a lot left, but it may be all I need because I just want to do some fun stitching on this. I think when I did it, yeah, you know, you look at it. I purposely used contrasting colors. So red and green, or in this case, the coral and the lime green are complementary colors. So when I stitch through the wool of the coral, I use the lime green. When I stitch through the petals that you can see of the lime green, I use the coral color. And then out here, I just did some kind of starburst stitches. So I'm going to set this one aside. We'll come back to the orange, but I'm going to go ahead and thread up. There it is. I'm going to go ahead and thread up our coral. Hopefully that's enough. And this is a similar type of couching to that. It's just that our stitches are going to be significantly longer because the petals are longer. So I'll show you what I mean by that. All right, so I'm threading this up. We're still talking couching, which is the stitch that we used where you're laying threads over something to hold it down. Now this is a little bit of a modified couching in that to really hold this down, I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to go up under the coral. I'm going to come out right at this concave portion or the any portion of the petal. Lose my thread there. I got a little thread end peek in there, so I'm going to pull it a bit. There, it popped. I felt it. I could come all the way outside this and go back in, but what I tend to do, because I really want that to stay down, is about 1/8 of an inch from the edge, which is pretty narrow. I'm going to go in. And I'm going to go between my blanket, between the sand, up under the green, and I'm going to come out at the next concave, you know, the inside portion of the next petal. So I've couched one down. I've just laid threads over the top. Now this time I did stitch through the green a little bit, and that should hold that down. And I'm going to repeat that again. I'm going to go about 1/8 of an inch from the end down the center of that. I'm going to work my needle through until I get to that concave, that little any part of the flower petal junction again. And that'll just lay that thread down. Now be careful not, if you pull that too tight, it looks what it does, it scrunches up. So be careful that you pull it just tight enough so that there's no excess loop in the thread, but tight enough to just hold it down. And again, I'm using complementary colors on purpose as I stitch this down, but I truly believe that it would look awesome with any color threads that you used. So you'll have somewhere between 8 and 9 different color threads in your kit. Use what makes you happy. So I've got one last one to do in the coral color. And I'm going to switch it again. And I'm going to come up somewhere, maybe right over here. So that's that. Now I want to lose that thread end again, so I'm going to kind of bury it from one side to the other. Then I'm going to go up under the sand again and go back the other way. I think I'm still keeping no stitches on the back, which I kind of like. If you get some stitches on yours, don't worry. It's really okay. And I've gone back and forth under there 3 times, so surely my stitch is secure, and I'm going to go ahead and clip that. So I've used the coral to hold down the lime green, and now I want the yellow green or lime green to hold down the coral. Remember with your floss, and this one happens to be color 4069, 4069, you're going to look it over and pull the longer one. Now this one's got us fooled because they're about the same, but I'm hoping that our track record of pulling from the side with the skew and the floss number is the way to pull it. And it doesn't seem to be on this one, so it tricked us. I'm going to go this way instead. Yep, for whatever, you know, once in a while you may get one you have to fight with. Don't keep pulling if it's knotting up on you. Take a second to smooth it out and see if you can fix the problem. We don't want to create a knotted problem for us, but it looks like this one is not going to cooperate. I'm going to clip that at an angle. I'm going to pull my 2 threads that I need, which you've seen done before. And again, I'm choosing the complementary color to the coral to couch down that flower. Remember, we're pulling these threads 1 strand at a time to create a 2-strand thread for the embroidery of embellishment or motifs. So there's my edge. Cotton balls. Let's see if I can get it wet enough. By the time I do that and go to the needle, it seems to be dry. Anyhow, we'll try that. And I got it the first time then. Yay! Woohoo! All right, remember our knot. Crosswise. 3 wraps. Forgot the count.